We're starting off with one of the more unique critical edges in the game. Astaroth does a whopping 85 damage, and it's a unbreakable grab. It's very slow, so you're only going to have to worry about it actually punishing some of the most punishable moves in the game. However, in the neutral, you can't duck it post-flash, and it's horizontal, so you can't step it either. As there's nothing you can do about it post-flash, this critical edge forces you to make a read proactively. You can duck before the flash comes out, and it's worth noting that it's incredibly slow to recover on whiff, so you can get your biggest, slowest launcher on this. The other things you can do proactively are to use a reversal edge or airborne attacks, as it is a grab and it won't hit these. Aswell's critical edge is 20 frames, meaning it's only really going to punish things that are already heavily punishable. It does, however, do a lot of damage, so it's good as a combo tool. Outside of punishing minus 20 or more moves, this is its main utility, as just throwing it out is actually very risky. It's minus 20 on block, and at minus 20, most of the cast are going to be able to technically launch punish this. You're just going to have to be careful and watch your range, as it does have some mild pushback on block. When he has activated Soul Charge, Aswell has access to a second critical edge, which has enormous range and does a ludicrous 140 damage. However, this critical edge's utility is even more locked behind basically being used in combos, as it is incredibly slow and insanely punishable on block at minus 30. Also, while it has big range, it doesn't have any pushback whatsoever, so you can judge where you're going to be left at on screen if you have any of those tip range lethal hit punishes. Cervantes' critical edge is the first of one of the many more generic critical edges on the list. It has good range and it's 16 frames, making it a very strong block and whiff punisher. It's 16 frames fast, and it's also minus 16 on block. A lot of the critical edges on the list have these exact properties. Keep in mind that where you see me punishing with Zasalamel here, a lot of the faster characters in the game are going to have stronger punishes than him at 16 or 18 frames. I did mention that a lot of these critical edges do have very similar properties, and this one is basically the same as Cervantes. It's 16 frames, making it a very strong block and whiff punisher. It's minus 16 on block, so make sure to find out your best 16 frame punish to use against this. And once again, Grow's critical edge does follow the same pattern, with one minor difference. It's 16 frames, strong block and whiff punisher, and it's minus 16 on block, use your best 16 frame punishment. The only big difference is that for some reason, Grow's seems to be sidesteppable post-flash, as long as you're not right up in his face. It's not the easiest, but it's definitely doable, so you should try this out in practice mode. Ivy's critical edge is a pretty massive pain in the backside. It's very slow, so it's not really going to be used for block or whiff punishing, but it does have an auto GI built into it. As SOULCALIBUR 6's #1 zoner, it's incredibly powerful for her to have a tool that's so dangerous just because you're pressing buttons in her face. A good Ivy player is only really going to use this critical edge as a reversal, as it's minus 20 on block. But you do have to keep in mind that it has incredible range, and wherever you block it you will be pushed back a tiny bit, meaning you're going to have to judge the ranges to know which of your 20 frame or faster moves you'll have to use to punish this at all times. Kilik's critical edge is really good. It has a bunch of combo utility where it will spike and allow for a lot of wall carry and ring out potential. It's 20 frames, meaning it can be a good block and whiff punisher, and it's also totally safe on block, and it forces crouch. Moves that force crouch on block will force you to attempt to punish, even though you can't in this instance, with either a while rising move or moves that start with a 4 or 6 notation. If you do want to make a proactive read on him activating this critical edge, step to your right as it has better tracking to its left. When in Soul Charge or Demon form, Kilik's critical edge totally changes into this ridiculous high unblockable that does insane damage. It's actually nothing like Astaroth's, it's 12 frames. Being able to block and whiff punish at 12 frames with this much damage is crazy when he's in Soul Charge. However, which is good for us, we can duck it post flash, meaning he can't just throw it out, and if he does, duck it and optimise your punishment from crouch. Maxie's critical edge surprisingly turns out to be one of the most interesting in the entire game. For one, he can cancel it just like Paul Phoenix from Tekken 7. This gives him a combo with extra damage, carry and Oki, as well as being able to just ring out. For a 16 frame move, yeah, that's really quite good. And the situation he's left in on block is actually really interesting too. It leaves him in one of his stances, don't ask me, I don't play Maxie, and he can't block, meaning that you can just hit him with the slowest launchers. However, he does have options from stance, such as B+K, which is a guard impact. All of this comes together to make it so that the only guaranteed punish you can get is 18 frames or faster. I personally recommend sticking with this, but you could make a hard read. Though it probably has the most boring animation out of all the critical edges in the game, Mitsurugi's isn't the 16 frame minus 16 version. It's actually 12 frames, which is ridiculously fast, but it is minus 24 on block. Optimise your punishment for this. At 24 frames, everyone can get something juicy. Nightmare's critical edge is predictably high risk, high reward. During the critical edge's startup, Nightmare has armor. He will soak up any mid or high hits, and if you do a second, you get GI'd into the guaranteed super. Lows will hit Nightmare completely out of this, so lows with counter hit properties are a really strong option, and throws knock him out of it also, as well as break attacks and unblockables. It's also minus 20 if you do block it. Once again, this has some pushback, so be aware of the range for your punishment. The held version of Nightmare's super becomes unblockable, and it boosts the damage massively. However, this isn't really that strong of an option. As long as you're not throwing out a 2-hit mid-high string and you get GI'd, you have plenty of time to sidestep even after he armors through your move and launch him for this. Raphael's critical edge is low-key one of the very best in the game. It has ridiculous range. Is only 2 frames slower than the generic critical edges at 18 frames. Oh, and in his prep stance, it's a break attack. And on top of all of this, it has pushback, and even if you're backed up to the wall or the ring edge, it's totally safe on block. If you are going to make a proactive read against this, I recommend stepping to your right rather than to your left. To the left, it has some mild tracking. Songmina's critical edge is also 18 frames with good range, making it a decent block and whiff punisher. This one though is minus 18 on block, but it forces crouch. Once again, remember that to punish this you're going to have to use either while rising moves or moves with a 4 or 6 direction in them. Siegfried's critical edge is another one that I personally consider really strong. It's a tiny bit on the slower side at 20 frames, but with the range it has, it's an amazing whiff punisher, and when it will punish a -20 move with a lot of pushback, it's worth it there also. But the biggest thing is that it's another one that's totally safe on block. Once again, on a proactive read, step to your right, not to the left. Unfortunately, at this point there isn't that much to say about Sophitia's critical edge. It's another one that's 16 frames, so an amazing block and whiff punisher, though its range is actually fairly weak, and it's -16 on block. When you hear that a character's critical edge has literal invincibility frames during its startup, you're going to be thinking that's pretty incredible. And while it is a very strong answer to your opponent's offense, it's also extremely risky. It's -12 on block, you can reversal edge on reaction to the flash, you can even GI on reaction to the flash, though this only gives a level 1 GI, so no guaranteed punish, so you'd rather take your -12 for blocking it. However, if you have an auto GI fast enough, you can get a true punish on this critical edge. Talon's critical edge is another really interesting one. It's 20 frames and has a lot of range, so once again a good whiff and situational block punisher. It low crushes incredibly early in its startup, and if you block the full string, it's plus. The answer to this critical edge is to GI the third hit. Now there's a much smaller gap here than there is in Taki's, you can't get a reversal edge, and only extremely fast AGIs will work. For the rest of the cast, you only get a level 1 GI, so you only get frame advantage and nothing guaranteed, but that's better than giving Talon plus frames. There are slight differences between Tira's critical edge when she's in jolly and gloomy states. However, thankfully for you and me, this doesn't change the utility or the frames of the move, just its damage. And surprisingly, past that point, it's actually quite generic. Both versions are 16 frames, and you guessed it, -16 on block. Voldo's critical edge is probably one of the weaker ones. It's 20 frames, and it doesn't have the best range. It's also -16, and it leaves Voldo in backturned. This means that he takes a couple extra points of damage when he's punished. Xianghua's critical edge is fairly similar to Mitsurugi's in that it's incredibly fast at 12 frames, so an amazing block and whiff punisher, but it's also much more punishable than a lot of the critical edges at -20. Yoshimitsu's critical edge is fittingly unique to the character. It's a full screen whiff punish. It's also a break attack, so no reversal edge or GI for your opponent, and it's plus on block and forces crouch. It's an amazing critical edge, but force him to use it as a whiff punisher, because if he just throws it out, you can sidestep and launch him post flash. And we've saved probably the best critical edge in the game till last, though that is only convenient because it's in alphabetical order. Similarly to Ivy's, Zasalamel's CE has an AGI built into it, making it risky to basically press any kind of buttons against him whenever he has meter. It's also not only safe but plus on block and gives him a curse on block, and it's a break attack so you can't reversal edge or GI it. Its only slight downsides are that it has relatively poor range, so it can actually activate its auto GI and still whiff, and it's linear enough that if you proactively step it, you're going to get a big punish. And there you have it, guys. That's every critical edge in Soul Calibur 6 and how to punish them. when possible at least. I think it's fair to say that I worked really hard on this one. There's only small pockets of frame data out there right now, so a lot of this I put together myself. A big thank you to all of the people who did help me with parts of the information in this video, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please like, comment and subscribe if you did, and I'll be back soon with more.